Recording in progress. Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
All right. Good evening. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Programs and Services Committee. It is Wednesday, April 8th. I am Councilor Josh Krinsman, Councilor at Large from Ward 4, Chair of the committee. We are joined online by Councilor Julia Malachy from Ward 3, Vice Chair of the committee. In the room, we have President Oliver from Ward 1, Councilor Brittany Hume-Charm from Ward 5, Councilor Martha Bixby from Ward 6, Councilor Lyle Baker from Ward 7, and Councilor Stephen Farrell from Ward 8. We're joined by COO, John Rice, what are you?
CCSO, Community Services, Chief Community Services Officer.
Chief Community Services Officer.
Rolls right up. Yeah, exactly.
And former chair of the Programs and Services Committee.
Chair of the Programs and Services.
The one who actually did it well. Looks like from the law department we have Jonah. Okay. Jonah Temple, sorry. And our able clerk, Miles Starkey. All right, first item on our agenda is item 110-26. Oh, sorry, we're being audio and video recorded, so everyone be careful. Don't say anything bad about your kids. First item on our agenda is item 110-26. This is a request for a pre-budget planning discussion. This is, again, just a discussion item. I think several other committees have done this, so some of you are familiar with this, more so than I am. We have the budget coming up. As folks have seen the calendar, budget discussions will be coming up in the next month and a half, something like that. And we are told, I don't know if you want to shed any light on this, that there are going to be some changes in the process this year. And I think the mayor expressed a desire to have a process that was more suitable to the needs of the council. That the council appreciated more of what they were experiencing in the budget deliberations than had been in the past. And so to that end, they sort of asked, like, what do you guys want to see? What would be helpful? I think that's a fantastic, and I think that's a great way to approach this. And so I wanted to have this discussion here tonight to hear from members of the committee what you would find helpful to hear from the department heads when they come present their budget to us in the due course of business. So with that, I'm happy to open it up, see if there are particular requests. I have, a couple suggestions myself, but I want to hear from folks. So do you have? No, okay.
Unless anybody has specific questions that I might be able to answer. No, I don't have anything else.
I didn't know if there was any discussions you had with the mayor that you wanted to.
The only discussions I've had is shared.
Okay. Councilor Baker.
Just law department I'm always interested in, which is how do they decide what to handle inside and how to decide what to handle outside or get in outside counsel. This is, we have a very able staff who can handle a bunch of things, but there are specialized issues, oftentimes like labor management issues. And we had someone in the department who did that, and I don't know what's happened to that particular role. And there are other things, so I think it's always useful to have at least an explanation of where they're going, and then some sense of the judgments and settlements account, because that's obviously an important potential financial liability for the city, where that's, how much is in it, how do they decide what to be the right amount, that sort of thing.
So those are both specific to the law department.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other thoughts about, generally speaking, what you'd like department heads or to come present?
For the clerk's office, if I can, one other, is the elections office is now in the clerk's office, and it's a very complicated function now because of mail-in voting, in-person early voting, and I think it's important to understand how that operation is being run and what resources are needed and are they available to get it done, because it's as we know, it used to be much simpler than it is now, and it also has its own kind of political overtone in the sense of being a subject of conversation in itself, not being one party or another, but just are the process working, how's it working, and that sort of. So those are the two that came to mind.
Okay. Other comments, Councilor Trump?
Coming out of this Monday's Newton Public Schools budget meeting, I would love to hear from the schools, Dr. Nolan, about, given the cuts that have had to be made, how will they be, how will Newton Public Schools be attempting to hold on to the objectives of some of the lost roles, particularly those that relate to some that are specifically called out as being key values that Newton Public Schools espouses, things like diversity, equity, inclusion. Also, there were cuts to student mental health, support services, and sustainability. So what we have heard from the school committee is that from the school committee and the superintendent is that those efforts will continue on, even though some of those headcount were lost. And I would like to just understand a little bit more about how that might happen.
All right. Thank you, helpful. Other, Councilor Farrell?
To piggyback on that conversation, I would love to have the opportunity to really talk about, it may happen somewhere, but I haven't been part of it. How we get out of this annual problem, and how the school department, or the schools can begin to show us how they're planning 5 years out, and what sort of programmatic changes that will cause significant increases get blended in, and how we begin to pay for that. And on that other side of that, I would like to understand what are the opportunities for the city to begin working toward increasing revenue available to the city, so that we're not completely hemmed in by 2.5 commercial development, residential development, increase in taxes. Is the city thinking about and working toward, either working with the state or whomever, about increasing revenues, particularly with respect to 2.5? Is that the only, is an increase in property tax the only way we can increase our budget, or is there another way we should look at that? It's just, I'd just like to know what thinking is going on in both the administration and the school department. But those are the big ones. How we get the money, and how does the school department understand? I think it's coincides with a little bit of what you said.
So I think what I heard, if I could just say it back to you,
Please.
is that from the school department particularly, you would like to see sort of a 5-year outlook of programmatic or instructional changes that may have an impact on the budget, and whether there's a plan
Yes.
for the implementation. I think I also heard you say more generally, you want to hear overall about ways to increase revenues, which it feels like is more a question maybe for the mayor's presentation to the city about the overall budget.
Right.
Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Those are the few.
Okay.
I will piggyback again, while we're talking about the schools piece. With the 5-year or longer term outlook for the schools, I think it would be helpful to maybe see, we talk about this path to thrive, right? Like, what are some of the key, I heard you describe this year as like putting a brick in the path to the Thrive plan, right? Like they were saying, this like this year's addition of the math pathways is sort of only one brick, but we're trying to make more strides on the path. So what are the major pieces of that path? And then like how would those be paced over the coming years?
Or what is the impact on the budget?
And
year
there,
1, 2, 3.
yes, yeah, and like the magnitude, maybe like some of, and it could be, you know, even saying like budget ranges or, you know, low, medium, high impact on budget. But then along with that, we have been hearing from the superintendent about how the leaning into the adoption of the MTSS, multi-tiered support system, would realize efficiencies in the budget because it would reduce the number of kids who might ultimately require IEPs. So I would love to see some of that math even at a conceptual level. This may not be all part, you know, it may not be possible to get all of this as part of the budget presentation, but I think as we are thinking about what Councilor Farrell was talking about in terms of like, we know that the revenues are going to be finite for a long time. We know that there are additional things that want to be added. Like, where do we get to the point where we start to see some of the efficiencies coming through from the pieces that we're making, that we're investing in?
Thank you. Councilor. Yeah, let me just, before I come to you, Councilor Malky, it has been my experience, and we will see, but it has been my experience that the school department's budget is unique in terms of the presentations we get. I don't know if it's because of the back and forth with the school committee, the nature of when they present their budget and how much it goes through, but I feel like we usually get a lot of information on the school department budget. So I'm happy to, you know, convey all this feedback, but I think generally speaking, we get a lot more of this, of what you guys are looking for.
Great.
Than I think we do from other departments, but.
And I think the one thing I would add to that, a lot of the, if we end up asking for information that in this particular case, NPS hasn't provided yet to the school committee, it should go to the school committee first, for sure. I mean, that's their,
Some of it, yeah.
that's their lane.
Yeah.
Because like, I love the questions. My guess is the answers are going to be coming to us through the school committee at some point, near or distant future, depending.
All right, Councilor Malky.
You're still
You're
on
muted.
mute.
She's not able to unmute.
Okay, there. All right. Yeah, the dog here just got the zoomies and he was making noise. Just generally for, and this is not specific to particular departments, I guess. If we could, and I think we've kind of talked about this before or elsewhere, if we could kind of bring the revolving funds of the different departments into the main part of the budget presentation, like a status update of what comes in, the balance, and sort of an overview of that. Another thing I would like to hear about is unfilled positions, because there's, I know, just, I mean, for one example, forestry has a perpetually difficult to fill that 9th tree work position, but I think some of the other departments too, that positions that are going unfilled for a long time, and this might, pardon me, apply more to some of the departments that are not under P&S purview, but positions that are staying unfilled, what's not getting done, and kind of the flip side of that, what, even if you have a fully staffed department, what are you not doing that you would like to be doing if you had another person or half person or whatever, and also, God, what was my other thought? I think that was basically it. There was something else, but it might come back to me. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, I'm kind of add one thing, you guys tell me if this makes sense. Every year we get from the departments, we get what last year's budget number was, the last few years, what the budget number was, and what the proposal is this year. And I feel like what's missing from that, what is always absent from our lens into this, is what additional expenditures were made in that department. Right, so you had a budget, and then any number of items come up during the year that supplement that spending. And so when we look at the budget for this year, it feels a little off to me because it doesn't really align with spending we're gonna assume goes to that department versus what was spent on that department last year, the year before that. So it feels like to me it would be helpful to see the budgeted number as well as maybe additional expenditures column, and we can sort of compare them as we want, because it's not an apples to apples thing. I get that a budget to a budget isn't apples to apples, but we're also trying to plan for the year and how much do these departments need. So it's just one thought I had. You guys tell me what you think about that. Councilor Farrell.
I agree with you, and in the same way that I would love to know about plans for the school department 5 years out, I'd also like to know what the administration is looking at for the next 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Is it doing more than maintaining and matching increases because of inflation? Or do we have are they coming up with plans for things that are going to be big ticket items 3 years from now or something? And knowing all that, I think then hopefully we could all think about where does that money come from and how can we be supportive of the administration in raising that money?
President Oliver.
Love the questions that I'm hearing, because the idea of focusing a little bit on staff makes total sense. I think that's a standing request across all departments, so I hope that, because that's always obviously a big expense. I think one of the questions that I want to have all of the departments that are going to come to PNS at least talk to, if not present to us on, how can we help them? What is it they, like, can we help them get messages out? You know, everyone's got a new program or project or something going on. I think Councilor Farrell said it well, like, how can we, like, help them get something done? And what he's got.
I'm sorry, Chair. I have a few thoughts maybe to share later, but I got a second.
And I think, really, it's people, one of the challenges that I know is out there as well is, and this might come up naturally in the conversation, if you had an extra dollar, what would you spend it on? I think I've asked it pretty much that exact same way a couple of different times with a couple of the committees. Revolving accounts is a big one. It's my understanding also that revenues will be a separate, like, chapter, tab, section, whatever, of the budget book, which is really where the revolving accounts come into play. I think that'll be obviously a really big deal for, you know, Parks and Rec, inclusionary zoning. It's a little bit different now than it used to be in the past because those dollars flow into the Affordable Housing Trust and so forth now. But those will be big considerations as well. So that's, I'm hoping, will be part of their conversation. And we should probably just do a little poke to make sure it does. But I'm actually looking forward to seeing how they're structuring conversations this year.
Councilor Baker.
There are two things that I think are maybe a little broader. Well, the school department, let me take this one. When we had tours of the schools, I went by a board to look, you know, went around it. And I recall having asked about whether and how the school department has thought of, and had started to think about building endowments. Because this is a community that might be able to support education on a continuing basis outside the tax revenues. And the question is, what does that look like? You know, and there are people who have graduated from Newton schools who've gone on to important roles in different fields, and who might very well be willing to sort of down with, not a chair or something, but some way to supplement the school budget in the instructional side or otherwise. And that's not going to be a substitute for tax revenues, but that's something that we've heard about. And the Newton Schools Foundation does a good job of, sort of the operating side, but this is really looking at kind of almost capital level expenditures or endowments that support things on a continuing basis rather than, and so that may be not a conversation for the budget per se, but I think it's an issue that is worth considering. And then the other piece is the big Brookline is going through a $20 million override campaign. That's a big number, and they're going to be voting on that at some point this year. I think either Lexington or one of the some town like Lexington has just voted an override, and so historically in Newton, the mayors have got about one override chance every 10 years. That's about been our historical precedent, and there have been talks about whether we're going to ever consider doing something else. The administration may not want to talk about that right now, but given the inflation rate and everything else, the question to go to Council Farrell's question is the ultimate resource for the city are its own citizens, and what are we going to ask, and why are we going to ask it, and when, if we have to, maybe not this term, but there are places they were going down that path, and I don't know whether it's fair to ask the administration that question at this stage, because I don't want to have them disadvantaged by us asking it if they decide it's an important thing they want to carry forward with. But I do think it's an issue that is sort of in the background, because we're all looking at 2.5% plus new growth and inflation rates that are going to be higher than that.
I mean, in some ways, the questions are linked of what would you do if you had more money? And if we were going to pass an override, what would you want to include within the ask? Right, is essentially what you're asking. And in some ways, there's some overlap there, right?
Well,
It's a discussion of what aren't we able to do that we want to do.
And then it goes down the road of, is it a CIP type thing, i.e. debt exclusion, or is it more of an operating override kind of a thing, and that goes into their operating budget? But yeah, I mean, they're definitely related.
Yeah, is that fair?
Yeah, and my sense is that the capitals are probably going to be in the project pipeline, because big ticket items like new schools, I think are going to be coming through, or replacement schools are going to be coming through the debt exclusion gate.
Correct.
And the question is, what happens to operating overrides, and where do they fit in this situation when?
Yeah.
This is a we've got a very experienced financial officer. I was pleased to hear from Maureen that she is going to stick around a little longer, which is I think positive for the city, that she's not turning into a pumpkin in July as here. But how that's framed, this is one of those questions that may be worth having the chair carry back up to, because again, it has ramifications beyond just asking the question.
And if I may, like, specific to your comment about the O word. Mayor Laredo has said police HQ, right? Warden Underwood challenge, Brown Middle, South, top of mind. All pretty much, I think, in that order. For the most part, there might be some things that have to go together and can't be together, and so on and so forth. But yeah, it's out there. So,
Councilor Farrell.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
All of this. I have thought a lot lately about, well, actually for almost 2 years, when I listened to Ann and Owen talk about creating a STEM center using Oak Hill Brown and South. And today I always get really concern when I hear people talk about doing something with South or with Brown and not looking at this fabulous idea that she has about creating a STEM center, which I think could draw students from all over the place if they allowed to come. But more importantly, or at least immediately, I think it opens up the conversation about why can't we have capital campaign funds that are not just directed toward residents of the city, but major foundations and corporations who might look at a STEM center and say, yeah, that's a great idea. We might be able to give you, seriously, $10 million over 10 years to support this. But putting together a serious capital campaign program and not just thinking about doing something in Newton South, but saying every time Anna Nolan opens her mouth, she talks about I'm sorry, it's 100 yards from my house. I can't remember. Brown as being one of the most, one of the worst physical sites in the system. And then Oak Hill is just this tiny little, I mean, there's a notion that Anna Nolan has to create something that I don't think would be hugely successful, but would add a sense to education in Newton that would be extraordinary. And I think what it means is that we need to open up our minds to other funding. Naming buildings, naming property. I don't know why we are opposed to naming opportunities.
I will tell you that, that's a whole nother complication.
That may be, but I would like to hear.
No, I appreciate it, and I don't mean to cut you off, but I feel like we're getting a little bit away from like, what do we want the department to present to us, and what are we actually gonna have a discussion about?
When I listen to Councilor Oliver say, you know, there are the 5 schools coming up, and one of them is South. And I'm saying, I want to hear somebody say, like me, excuse me, what if I have the concept of a STEM center that would include South, Oak Hill, and Brown? That why aren't we looking at that? Where when you talk to Josh Morse about replacing Brown and Oak Hill 20 years from now at $1.1 billion each, Josh, what if you did 2 of them, you Brown and Oak Hill together with Newton South? Oh, maybe we could do that for $600 million total. And then you add on a $50 million endowment for that STEM center program. I'm just saying, I think it's worth asking the question. When somebody's not saying we need to do something South, yep. What's the bigger picture? If we're looking at bigger pictures, let's look at some bigger pictures, particularly since it comes from Anna Nolan. That's one of the reasons I tried to stop the emplacement of the solar panel things on the parking lots at Brown and Oak Hill, because we don't have any vision about what's going to be needed for that space. Thank you.
Councilor Chong.
While we're talking about the big ticket asks, when we hear from the mayor and as he is foreshadowing the debt exclusion asks, I have similarly heard mention of all of those, and I think it would be helpful to understand how those coming in what feels like the shorter term might then suggest the timing of, you know, what might be the bigger O. I don't know if these things are typically touched on at all in the mayor's budget presentation, but I have the concern that if we are going and making so many big ticket asks via debt exclusions because they tend to be more permissible by voters, then we may be shooting ourselves in the foot for an operating override. And I think that there are a lot of people who are really hoping that we are more successful on an operating override this time. And I would just love to hear some reassurance that we're not going to be, you know, blowing our one ask by going for 5 big buildings or a few campuses. as important as they are.
All right,
Could I add to that?
yeah, and then I want to move on.
No, that's
So
fine.
if I may, there isn't anyone who's coming in front of program and services who's gonna be able to answer those questions.
Yeah.
Right, so that, it's not in the purview of any of the departments coming to us.
Yes.
I would just say to that, it's all of a piece, and maybe we need to find a different way to have these conversations. Rather than just the budget time. But also in terms of an override. I talk to people all the time. There are people who don't want their taxes going up because they don't know what it's for. But there are people who do understand that this city can't afford to continue to live on 2.5% plus whatever. There are people who understand that, but they want to be educated about why it's necessary. And so part of the question is, when are we going to start and how are we going to start educating the public? Because it's really hard to get to all 35,000 households in the city. Nobody's got a list, but the mayor doesn't have a list of 35,000 households. But how do we begin to have conversations with the city about all of this, since they're going to pay the bill?
All right, I am going to move to NAN this because I don't think we need to do anything further. We've had our discussion, so I move to NAN 110-26.
Right.
Any
You want
discussion on
NAN?
that? Sorry? NAN?
That would be, never mind, please. Total brain burn. Yeah.
Great. So it sounds like a second. We don't need a second, but thank you very much. Appreciate
Anything I
it.
can do.
Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor of NAN, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay.
And then I assume from here you'll pass
Yeah.
the question.
And I can work with you, Miles, to make sure I have them all right from our, summary of it. But I was taking notes here. Next item 113-26. This is authorization to appropriate and expend $300,000 to the Newton Communication Access Center, Inc., which is New TV.
And just to let you know, we are being joined by Bob Kelly, who's the CEO of New TV. So if you have any questions, I didn't share that with you guys before, so I just wanted to let you know.
And we have the letter from the mayor, which folks saw in the packet, as well as the invoice for the $300,000 of this fund. I don't think there's no presentation, right?
I don't believe so. It was just these materials.
Okay. Folks probably know about this fund. This fund is essentially for this purpose. It's not a broadly capitalized fund for other purposes. So any discussion on this? Does anyone have any comments or questions? It looks like, as Miles said, Mr. Kelly was kind enough to join us here. Folks have questions about New TV? Councilor Baker.
I have a comment. I just want to, I did a TV program on New TV before the pandemic came along, so I'm biased in their favor, but I think it's a really important public and community resource. So I'm glad to see this happen.
And
Councilor Maliki?
Yeah, I think the docket item mentioned RCN and Verizon, but not Comcast.
It says the letter mentions payments made by Comcast, RCN, and Verizon.
Yeah, the accounts, the 150,000 from the RCN license fee account and the 150,000 from the Verizon license fee account. But then nothing coming from the Comcast license fee account. Is that depleted or something going on there?
Well, I don't know if Mr. Kelly knows about that, but I don't think we have anyone here from the city to respond to that.
Oh,
If I could, Counselor, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you, Counselor. Comcast, Verizon, RCN contribute 5% of their gross revenues, which is then surcharged back to the consumer. And New TV receives 4% and the city retains 1%. The city is supposed to keep that in a PEG enterprise fund. And I didn't know that it was itemized separately or delineated separately between RCN, Comcast, and Verizon. But I think the larger pool in that enterprise fund is from all three. That's the only information I can give you. I don't know the inner workings of that account.
So Councilor Maliki, I think, thank you for that information, Mr. Kelly. I don't think it's going to hold up the item tonight, but if you want, we can try and seek a clarification from the administration why the Comcast licensing fees were not referenced in the description of the docket item.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a separate account for each of the companies, and we're pulling money out of two of the three accounts. But yeah, I'm fine with, totally want to support New TV, and maybe at the same time we could get an update from, I guess, the comptroller's office, how much is in each account and what the trend has been over time, because I know that the cable fees are going down. It seems like every year. The total proceeds. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Maliki. Councilor Charm.
My question was similar to the end of Councilor Maliki's. I'm curious how this amount compares to the revenues we've been able to pass along to New TV in the past, and what that trend looks like. So, Mr. Kelly, I don't know if you are able to speak to that.
I can. Thank you, Councilor. In the past, we've asked for upwards of 350,000, and annually we've been receiving 200,000. I think if you go back all the way to 2016, when cable was there was no real streaming back then. We probably had 28,600 cable subscribers. We're down to about 13,500 in Newton now. So if you can see, the over 50% of the subscribers have cut the cord to cable, and that means less revenue to New TV, and therefore the 1% that the city retains, less revenue to the city as well.
And so you mentioned in the past you've asked for 350 and you've received 200. This year we're passing through 300. So so can you just explain that? I don't think I quite followed.
Yeah, I think we probably asked for 350 and got 300 this year. So we're really happy with the increase. And with your blessing, and I believe the Finance Committee and the council as a whole would happily take that in, which will be a supplemental to our budget. We're down about 500,000, on our budget, so 300,000 will help us. And there is a bill, just for keep everybody informed. There's a bill in at the State House, House Bill H91, which is a streaming tax bill. 40 states in the country have some form of a tax on streaming services: Netflix, Hulu, Peacock, Amazon Prime, you name it. And Massachusetts does not. So we're a little behind, but that is it's a digital products tax, and so if that gets passed, then revenue will be shared with the municipalities. You were talking. I'm a former city councilor and president of Waltham City Council. When you're talking about revenues, I was very interested in your conversation. The streaming tax, if it passes, the city of Newton would receive 2% of that. Community television in general would receive 2%, and the Commonwealth would receive 1%. So there would be revenues coming in from the streaming tax should that bill pass. So there were over 80 co-sponsors on the bill. So and I know that Representative Amy Sangiolo and Greg Schwartz are on that bill, signed on to it as well, and are very supportive. So from a revenue standpoint for all of us, New TV and the city, that streaming tax bill would be very important.
Thank you. Any other discussion or questions? Motions?
Sorry, may I ask one more
Councilor Charm.
question? So I understood from the letter and the fact that this is a percentage, that this is in some ways like an automatic percentage that is being paid to New TV into the city each year. But then I also just heard from Mr. Kelly that he's asking for a certain amount and only portion of that is paid. So I'm unclear as to whether this is like an automatic pass-through that we are just validating, or whether this is a request that there is then some discretion about how much should be fulfilled. Can anyone answer that for me?
The PEG revenues that come in are limited for the municipality, so the city of Newton can't go out and fill potholes with it or buy a fire truck. It has to be cable related. In the past, the city has used their portion of the funding to support the law department, specifically with cable television license renewals and any other telecommunications matters that come before the city. So that whatever isn't used has been going into the enterprise fund. If it didn't go into the enterprise fund, it would go back into the general fund at the end of the fiscal year. So thankfully, we have that enterprise fund to carry those revenues over. And so realistically, Council, New TV would love to have all 5% plus the capital money, but we have 4%, and that's the way it's been. I came over to New TV in 2008, and that's how it was in 2008, and it's been like that ever since. So the city does have a use for the money that they keep, but it's limited because it's the franchise agreements say that you can't use it for anything other than PEG related or cable related uses.
It is my understanding from previous years, and correct me if I go straight here, but it's not only are the dollars that the 1%, I believe, that the city actually kind of holds on to, not only can only be used for communications related to cable and the infrastructure that supports it, but I think I just heard, and that this is what I recall, is if we don't utilize that 1%, it falls into a stabilization fund that eventually is either used for our infrastructure costs or pass through to New TV, if I recall correctly.
Yes, correct, Mr. President. In the past, you're looking at cameras in the committee rooms now. So our partnership with the city is we took some of the capital money that came in and we outfitted the council chamber and the committee rooms. So that's why everybody at home is able to see these committee meetings. And that was out of that fund as well.
Councilor Farrell?
Well, we'd just like to say that New TV is one of the most critical venues we have for educating the public about what's going on. And I would hope we would never even think about cutting what we give to you and try to make it all as much as possible. And I also want to thank you for the things that you do that you don't charge us for. In particular, I point out Anna Nolan's address to many residents beginning of October, which you came and videotaped, and then you made that tape available to us, which I've shared with all of my colleagues last week. But those are important, very important to our efforts to educate the public about what's going on in the city. And unfortunately, our efforts, the venues are very limited. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you, Councilor. Yeah, I think that, if New TV were not receiving these PEG related funds from cable subscribers, it would probably be a fee-based service to the city, and then it would come out of tax dollars. So you'd be looking at it in your budget. But thankfully, we still have cable subscribers, and I'm sure Comcast, Verizon, RCN still go up on their bill. So unfortunately for the consumer, but good for us.
All right, any other discussion? Motion?
Yeah.
Councilor Chalmers moved approval. Any discussion on the motion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, councilors.
Thank you, sir.
Next item, item 76-26, okay. Discussion about establishing a commission to review compensation from mayor, city council, and school committee. So, this brilliant item was filed by Councilor Krinsman. The thinking was this: I think a number of us who have spoken to residents, who talk to residents about how many city councilors there are, what the compensation is, how many people are running for city council, how many people are running for school committee, how many people are running for mayor, hear all sorts of things. And one of the questions that comes up is, do you guys get paid? Is it a full-time job? How much are you paid? And so at fairly irregular intervals, we review that. It's set by ordinance, as folks know, and the city council fairly irregularly changes that. We do have an ordinance on the books that says that any change in the compensation of the city council shall not take effect until after there's been an election, right? Because you don't want people to raise their salary and start collecting, and I think that makes sense. But what we did talk about was, or what I had a number of conversations about, was sort of a dearth of candidates and a dearth of interest, combined with a number of people who are sort of appalled at the compensation for their elected officials. And so we have a new mayor, as you know, and I don't want to saddle the mayor with trying to look at this or trying to evaluate this, because the mayor has just been elected. I don't think he's interested in taking this up. But my thought was that since this is an ordinance set by the city council, what we could do was have our esteemed president select some residents from the city, maybe 7, 9 people, to look at this and perhaps make a recommendation to the city council. My recollection, Councilor Craig will know better than I, but my recollection is that when a review has been undertaken in the past, it has been non-elected officials who are asked to review this from their sort of third-party impartial lens. This item is particularly phrased this way because I don't want to ask the mayor to take part in this. I don't think the mayor's interested in taking part in this, and I don't think it would be fair to ask him to take part in this. But I think it might behoove us to let the president appoint some people to look at this and see if it's if any update to those ordinances would be warranted and what the impact would be expected to be. Would we see more candidates? Would we see more interest? Would there be any change in the city? Things like that. So that's my thinking. And let me just say very quickly that if there is interest among this committee, what I think we would do then, we could either hold it and draft this, or we could talk about it tonight, but what we would need to do is give sort of a charge and say, you know, we want to establish a commission to review the compensation of elected officials, you know, something along those lines. And any qualifications that we think members of the commission ought to have, if there are specific qualifications. A member with experience as an elected official, a member with an experience in financial background, you know, things like that, to give a little bit of direction to the president for who he selects. But then I think, at least my thrust of this item was to give discretion to the president, like every other, you know, appointment from the city council, to select the members of the commission to look at this. Councilor Farrell.
Thank you, Chair. My first suggestion would be, if it's possible, to separate out the mayor from city council and school committee. One, we are beginning to undertake a review of the charter, and the question of the role of the city council and perhaps even the school committee will likely be part of that conversation. I think it's pretty clear the role of the mayor will continue to be as chief executive officer of a nearly $600 million corporation, and is the compensation that the city offers people who would like to try and come in and run and make this work for all of us, is an appropriate salary. I would like to get that piece of it out of the way as soon as possible by having a commission look at the role of the chief executive and what that person, any person who fills that role, should be compensated. I think the other two, I would like that not to be complicated by the fact that we are also looking at the roles of this, certainly the city council, potentially the school committee, and in this review of the charter issues. So it would be my suggestion to write this in. Write out the mayor if you can.
Baker?
I'm embarrassed to say that my memory is not strong enough for me to recall how we did this last time. But we did this, you know, within a reasonable period, within the last decade.
We did this 10 years ago. It was a commission that made recommendations and then the city council modified. Didn't go exactly with the recommendations, but they modified.
Yeah, so this is,
I think there was either a practice or an ordinance that set the city council salary at 1/10 of the mayor's salary. And I can't remember if they were decoupled or just, you know, set that
I
way.
think they were decoupled because the mayor's salary ended up being a different model and it wasn't 10%. There was the one proposal, if I recall, was to index it so that, you know, there was whatever this mayor's salary was, the city council would be 1/10 or some division of that. But I think it was decoupled in the process. But anyway, I think my view is that I would just as soon see the two go together because I think the question of compensated for elected officials is a reasonable one, and I would not want to hold it up pending some change. I mean, the council can always make a decision not to accept a raise or to do something different. But I think there's value in having this conversation go forward. So I personally wouldn't separate the two in order to hold one and advance the other. Because I think that that sort of leaving the city council aside, I don't see a whole lot of change likely in the composition of the school committee, for example. I mean, there have been conversations around, and the question of term limits is one, but that's not a compensation issue. And the question of should they be in their compensation be increased, I think it would be odd to sort of leave them out or leave them in and not do the council. So I'm personally of the mind that they should look at all of them, but the council always has a discretion if we get deeply into a different model in the mind of people, even though I'm not in favor of one, that they want to change to, that might change the conversation about what the compensation should be. So,
and it's quite possible that the two conversations could be sort of happening simultaneously and inform each other. You know, that could be a benefit here.
And you know, the council ultimately is going to vote on all of them, and they can say, look, I want to vote on this and not on that. So I mean, there will be time to make the split, I think. But I think not to have the conversation go forward forecloses it automatically, you know, and that's what I would.
Yeah.
So I'd like to keep them all together, at least to start.
I completely agree with Councilor Baker. I think that the idea of separating them at some point could make all the sense in the world. I certainly wouldn't want to start out of the gate, for example, with two separate commissions. That I'm not quite sure if that's how you meant it or not, but I do think that if we have a group of folks who are looking at this, trying to figure out like, hey, are you guys worth it? If so, how much?
Yeah.
You know, or if so, how much more? You know, theoretically, fine. But I do also believe that one of the biggest driving factors is the composition of the council and the workload. That if we were to move to 8 and 8 or something like that, or 8 and 4, whatever, you know, we end up putting in front of voters, if anything, to me, that's perhaps the #1 driver of any change that I would even like remotely consider. And I've heard some other ideas, but we'll see what might come back from said commission. So I'd like to keep them together as well.
Okay, and I think what I'm also hearing from Councilor Baker and Councilor Oliver is that you would be interested in seeing a commission look into this?
Yeah,
or am I...
You know, it may be that I know the mayor's not interested perhaps in seeming to go there when he's got a fiscal difficulty on his hands. But I think the thrust of the commission is more institutional. It's a question of what are the offices merit given the inflationary pressures and the historical reason behind a lot of this. The council began as a volunteer body. I mean, back in the dawn of time when it was before the Board of Aldermen, you know, in the Jurassic Age, even before my time. but.
There was time before you.
Yeah. But,
Inspired.
yeah,
Council Baker knows how much I love him.
yes, I know. Anyway, the point I'm getting at is that the thrust of the conversation has always been that this is a role that should attract a wide range of people and not be something that is subsidized by people who have the means to do so. And especially families with children, no disrespect to myself, but my kids are grown, but there are people in this council who have younger children who have to take care of them from time to time and have to make arrangements. So if you, it always has struck me as an important part of democracy to make it an affordable role. And it's not, we've lost ground in 10 years because of inflation, and what was then a catch up is now a way behind. So that's just for the council's point of view, but for all the others too.
Councilor Farrell.
Thank you. Without getting into a discussion about what the ultimate size, configuration, and timing of members of the council and possibly the school committee, I always hold that as slightly separate. My question is, if we were to do something that would include the council and we wanted it to happen in 2 years, that means whatever changes we would make have to be done by December 27.
If we wanted them to change for the counselors who are sworn in on January 1st, 2028, yes.
Okay. Would it change, any change that might be recommended by a commission and approved by the council for the mayor, that will not, that could not possibly happen, or could that possibly happen before the current mayor's term expires?
Yes, I believe. We can give them a lot of room. Yes, I believe. I mean, there's a current ordinance that says that the compensation can't take effect until the next council is elected. But we can also choose an effective date. We could bump it out until, 2 years later or things like that. That would be within the discretion of the council in crafting the ordinance.
So the question is, does the council have the discretion to say, okay, we've got this recommendation for a salary for the chief executive, we've got this recommendation for members of the city council and school committee, and that happens within the next 2 years, but would the council have the discretion to say, and we want that implemented for the mayor on January 1, 2028, before his term is only half, the mayor's term is only half over at that point.
Right, I understand.
So we're making this decision independent of that person, correct?
Councilor
Oh,
Malik?
sorry, I thought it was long.
Okay.
I was like,
I'll look for the ordinance while we're talking, but I thought that the restriction was on city council because the city council has to approve the ordinance. I don't think a similar restriction applies to the mayor.
I think you're correct.
Okay, I just wanted.
Because
we can figure that out, and the
after
commission
the
can look into that.
It was an ordinance, not charter. I went back and read it. I'm like,
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Wasn't sure.
Again, also things, a commission can look into. And
Sure.
Councilor Maliki.
Okay, was on that point.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Maliki, can I just put you on hold for 1 second because Councilor Charm wants to continue this? Okay, Councilor Charm?
I had literally just read this today, so I was like, no, it is in the charter. Article 3, Section 3.1, the change in salary shall take, no change in salary shall take effect during the current term of the mayor in office.
Recording stopped.
With the adoption of the ordinance making session.
Okay, so it can't happen.
It would not take effect until the next mayoral term.
Okay.
Oh, okay. How about that? Not in the ordinance, that is in the charter. Yeah.
Unless
Do you want to read it? Sure.
Yeah, New TV is here, so they're recording it also.
Yeah,
but I
we
can
could
restart
change
it.
that too.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to say. I think I accidentally stopped the recording because I'm a co-host, and I thought somehow I was recording onto my tablet, which I didn't want to do, and I was trying to stop that, and I just make sure we've got the recording. Okay. But I do have another comment on the subject matter.
Okay, let us just get the recording up and running.
Great.
You can see the function There should be one here.
Recording in progress.
And while you're
All
at
right.
it, disallow her from taking the call.
Counselor Maliki.
Yeah, so I guess this whole topic is sort of not on the top of my priority list. It seems kind of tone deaf, but I guess my main reservation about the whole premise that people aren't running for city council or mayor or school committee or whatever because the compensation is too low. I guess I'm really skeptical. I don't see a lot of people really doing it for the money. Some might be doing it for the health insurance, which is a nice thing to have. But to me, I think the obstacles are the fundraising you have to do to campaign and or to self-fund, and kind of the nastiness of Newton politics. So I wish we had a way to use, there's this thing called flash vote. I'd love to, ask like random people, kind of random survey, why are you not running for city council? Something like that. What would make you run for city council? X amount of money, whatever. Because I don't think increasing the compensation from 15,000 a year to 20 or 30 or whatever a commission might come up. I'm skeptical that would achieve the stated goal. Thank you.
So can I just clarify, does that mean that you don't want to seek a commission to even look into it? Are you opposed?
I guess I'm sort of agnostic on it. If 9 members of the public want to talk about compensation, maybe it might be interesting to look at what are Waltham city councilors paid, Framingham city councilors. But I guess if we're going to have such a commission, and the president will have the task of figuring out who will be on it, it seems like the recommendations that could come back might highly depend on who is on the commission. So picking them is a important thing, and how would they be selected?
So that's one of the questions, as I was talking about in my introduction, is, well, let me say it this way. My proposal for the charge of the commission is the text of the docket item. The additional thing we would want to do if we form a commission, and anyone can modify that, we can talk about that, but is lay out any qualifications that we think those individuals ought to encompass. So like you're saying, Councilor Maliki, if we think a person needs to have, if we need a member on there with some elected experience, or if we need a member on there with a financial background, or if we need a member on there with, experience in health insurance, I don't know, then we can, or HR, right, talent recruitment. Then those are things we could lay out after our discussion, so that as, either a resolution or just a sort of charge when passing the item to the president has the criteria to fulfill in a little bit of direction, so that we know that the commission would actually accomplish the goals we've set out for it, which I think are answering questions like the one you are confident will be answered in the negative. Maybe it will be, but I think it's for the commission to answer that question.
Yeah, and I see your docket item includes evaluate the impact that salary has on the willingness of residents to seek elected office. So I would certainly welcome that aspect.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Councilor Charm.
In general, I am in favor of supporting a commission like this. I think that, currently we are, particularly for the mayor, right? If we were to look at, like, this is a full-time role, it requires leading a huge group of people. I believe that the salary is well below market, and that a lot of people who are living in Newton are fortunate enough to have more competitive options and also like a lifestyle that would make it difficult to be able to do that without having a significant amount of savings and wealth. And I agree with Councilor Baker that it should be, we should be able to make these opportunities be available to people regardless of personal wealth. I have the same hesitation that President Oliver has about the parallel conversations about potentially revisiting the structure of the council while having this conversation about compensation, because being one of 24 is very different than in like an evening, you know, part-time capacity versus like a half-time capacity, like some other cities have, or more of a full-time capacity, which, you know, I don't know that we would go to, but that's beside the point. And that I think each of those sort of would be suggesting very different sort of market comps of what that salary might or stipend might be.
Yep.
So I don't know how we can unentwine those, disaggregate those. But I would have the same question of like, are they going to suggest something for, you know, 24 and then have us go through a laborious process to say, actually, we think this council structure should be something else?
I mean, my response would be, those are excellent questions. Those are fair questions. And I would hope that a commission would respond to those questions. Maybe saying, this is what we recommend as a salary range for 24 counselors, given the workload today. If the council moves to 16 counselors, this is the salary range we recommend for counselors with those. I mean, part of this in here is that the compensation reflects the workload of the various elected offices. I'm specifically thinking about the mayor. I mean, the mayor has to live in Newton and work 80 hours a week. The mayor's not doing any other job. And the mayor's living in Newton, which is not a cheap place to live at the moment on $155,000 a year. The mayor may have a family, right? A component of this, I will confess, is also that, as was mentioned earlier, I think the president might do more work than the other city councilors, right? Would a commission say the president ought to get an additional stipend for being the president or the vice president or a committee chair?
Or a stipend for therapy.
Right? Or for therapy, exactly, right? It's a review of like, does this reflect what it is today? And again, it is just a recommendation. City council has to make a decision and own it, whatever it is. So, Councilor Farrell.
I'm in favor of having commissions with all three bodies. In my opinion, there's no reason to do that before next year. I don't think any commission is going to take a year to look at this. And I would think that one of the people you would have on the commission is somebody who does salaries, I mean, hiring, you know, whatever you call that.
And we're getting into it. Someone with experience with HR salary determinations, or okay.
And part of their role would be to talk about the mayor and that person's responsibility. Whatever we come up with in the next 8 months about how we would like to see, if any, changes in the composition of the council, they would look at the council. They could also look at the president of the council, the commission. They could look at all of it. But I don't think any of it has to be done before. I would like to see us say, let's do this, let's start that, get that commission moving in January. And it probably would take a couple of months for them to come back, make a recommendation. The council would have the time to consider it. And before the end of this session, they and we can make a decision about how we want to move forward. But so I don't think doing commission right now I think would be a necessary step right now, time-wise.
Gotcha. Sorry, Councilor Farrell and Councilor Baker.
I was just going to suggest that I agree with your expansion of the scope of the commission to say, looking at the salaries, understanding that there could be, you know, different ranges for different structures of the council. I think if we were able to say, can you please just consider these other things, then I would be fully supportive.
Councilor Baker.
my memory is it takes a while to find and get people to serve in a commission like this. We're effectively looking at something starting in the fall, realistically, because we've got the budget, we've got summer coming up. And the degree to which you want this kind of conversation to cook and then be done, frankly, if you were doing it, I would want it done before the next budget season starts, because there's a budgetary implication of this, not a big one, but there is one. And have the time to sort of absorb it. So I think they could proceed on a not expedited basis, but I would not want to delay it till January. No disrespect to the point that's being made about which piece falls into place. And I also don't, and that the premise is that we could resolve the composition of the council in the first year. I'm not confident that that's
That's the one that might take.
that one, maybe.
Without getting into that discussion.
Yeah.
There's no reason why the president can't begin to look for people to be on the commission and say to them, we would like this to start. Part of that, and I'm just saying, the commission doesn't have to start next month.
So I can't remember. It might be the Peter principle. I forget. There's a principle that the word
Yeah.
expands to
No,
whatever, right?
that's Parkinson's.
Yeah.
Peter principle is people rise to the level of incompetence.
Right.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Parkinson's law is work expands to fill the time.
That's the one I'm talking about. Yeah, yeah. Thank you. So, but my point is, with that, what I think would be appropriate would be for us to lay out a deadline by which we hope the commission will report back. And then, as long as the process takes to get there, it will. Because I think what we're more concerned about is the end of that process and how long the council would have to entertain that and when the council would be making decisions. And if we could come to agreement on what that date is, I think that would be helpful. I agree that it should be next year. President.
Tonight, do we want to? Because I think there's a long way to go to define what we want, and not only in the participants, but the questions we want them to consider. And I think that Councilor Maliki's point is completely legitimate. How do we go? How would we guide them to? We want you to look at other cities. We want you to look at other mayor, or other structures other than, and we want you to talk to 150 people in the public or whatever. Like, to me, all of those things are going to take us a lot longer than I think we have tonight to work out.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, like tonight, do we want to continue? Are we interested in doing this? And if so, then we keep defining it, because we've also got charter in front of us tonight.
A suggestion on that.
Councilor Baker. Yeah.
But Councilor Bixby is back and hand up. I'm glad to give you.
Well, I just wanted to get some information on them.
Well, let me make my
Yeah.
suggestion. I think there's a benefit maybe to hold it just long enough to get the last version of this commission and the charge to it before us, so we can at least see what we did before rather than invent this wheel. If there turns out to be pieces we can grab and then we say we want to adjust that. I just don't have it in handy. But it would be easy enough to have both the report that created it and the report they made as background for the next conversation we have in the committee. And then we would have some sense, because again, the composition of the council has always been a continuing conversation as well. And so that's not necessarily news. So I think at least going back and find out what we did before and how we did it would save us time, maybe.
Yeah, I'm perfectly happy, and it was actually my recommendation to hold this tonight. Based on what I have heard here, I'm happy to come back to the committee with a proposal for sort of a charge of the commission and a proposal, some proposed qualifications or requirements for members, and we can go from there.
Is it possible just to give us a copy of the next meeting of what the charge was, and or at least?
Well, I'm sure I'll base it on whatever it was before. I haven't looked it up, but I think
No,
it's a
no, I
great place to
understand.
start.
But
It's the whole thing.
I think at least I would like to look back at it, and I don't have access to it.
Yeah. I don't have it, but
I'm sure I could find it.
okay.
somewhere.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, which thing were you,
There was a prior commission that did this work.
perfect. There you go.
with the charter?
No, this is.
Salary.
It was just
Salary.
salary.
Yeah.
Salary. This
Was
is,
that the one, was it like 8 years ago, 10 years ago?
19,
7, 8 years ago, 7 years ago?
7, depending on when they came back, yeah.
oh, okay. Well, even if we just had the link to look it up, I don't mean to push through a lot of.
I think it's a great place to
Yes.
start. Councilor Bixby,
And my apologies.
let's seek you.
So, well, this was gonna be, and then I, based on that conversation, just looked it up. So this was last done in 2019, before that, 2005. I do think it would be, I mean, it looks like many of these were taken, if not taken further than their recommendations, which would be, it would be interesting to see then what decisions were made, not only what was the recommendation, but what decisions were made out of that and how were those made. On big picture, and apologies again for jumping in midstream here, I'm both very supportive of this because I do think, like you've identified, it can be very hard, and especially hard financially, to do this work, at what it's compensated at. And I guess I'm hesitant, maybe it's best to do it on its own and, separate it from other financial decisions. I mean, I think we're also ripe for a blue ribbon commission on our budgetary situation and future more generally. And it seems a little challenging to have a constructive discussion around this, perhaps particularly in our current political environment and all of that. Absent some of that, like, how does this fit in? Because it in some ways it seems like it would be very hard to raise salaries to a place where you could actually get,
Get decent people to run instead of us.
no,
Yeah.
get by on these. I mean, moving the council to a salary, competitive salary position in Newton, or even moving the mayors to running the equivalent of running a nearly $1 billion organization or whatever. Those are not necessarily in the cards for us. So I don't know what to do with that, because I do think it's worth looking at on its own, but I also, we have true financial constraints as a city, and we have, realities of what people can and should pay, people in our positions. So that's not a completed thought, but just some concerns or questions about how
And that is kind of the crux of,
Yeah.
that is, to me, that is basically the question I'm trying to ask of us tonight. Because I agree that for all we know, this commission could come back and say, you know what? In terms of, your peers, you guys aren't that far out of whack. They could come back and say that, and the public doesn't think we should have the city council or the school committee making any more than they currently do. And they might come back and they might say, but the mayor, however, that person deserves better, but they're making decisions in future, and by the way, that person, that office does demand an increase of blank, or should be pegged to interest rate plus with COLA increase, blah, 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 blah. Who knows? I think really the question that's being asked of us right now is, do we want to know? And I think we do. I think we want to know. Like, I don't know what we're going to find out or who would be on this commission that we would set in motion, but I think knowing is what we're being asked to figure out right now, and I'd like to know, because I'm with Councilor Farrell, who I think has been fairly eloquently in favor of. I think that the CEO of Newton, over a $500 million operation, probably deserves to make more than 10 city councilors. Yeah. That's just my personal thing. So.
They might come back and say the mayor deserves a raise and you guys make too much.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And to which I think we'd all say, zero minus what?
No, but I mean, really, I'm like you said, I just want to know. Yeah. So,
I
Councilor Carroll.
think having a commission to do this is fine, but you said earlier, it's not gonna happen today.
No.
We define the parameters.
Yep.
And begin to think about who you'd like to have on that, or at least what sort of backgrounds you would like to have represented. And maybe even begin to prepare people so in the fall they can come together and begin to talk about it. If that makes sense.
So I will, if folks are amenable to it, I will look up the Blue Ribbon Curve. If you want to send me the link to the Blue Ribbon Commission, I'll look up that charge along with the charge I have here in the docket item. If anyone wants to send me any notions for qualifications or background that they would like people to have, just send it to me directly. So we're not deliberating here, but I will consolidate stuff and come back to this committee in a month with that recommendation. Does that work? Councilor Malachy. Are you able to unmute, Councilor Malachy?
Got it. Yeah. I just wanted to note that, a couple of people raised the idea of committee chairs being paid different salary or the president being paid a different salary. I think, especially with committee chairs, you can always ask, we could always have the commission find out what other cities and towns do. But on the state ballot this November is a question to get rid of extra salary for chairs in the State House because of the feeling that it's been bad for democracy having so many representatives and senators sort of beholden to the leadership for their extra salaries. So I'm not sure that's the greatest idea, but it can always be investigated.
Yeah, we're just asking questions.
Okay. Thank you. All right.
And one last thing.
Councilor Charm.
If you don't mind, sorry. I know we all have a bunch of charter. I think this point that President Oliver made about COLA or an automatic percentage increase, to me, I would just love that to be captured as we think about the role of the commission. I completely agree that like this is such a politically charged topic that no one wants to touch it for years and years, and then you have crazy inflation, and then you have to do it all over again. So it has never made sense to me about why it's a flat number rather than a number that bumps up with COLA in the same way that other employees make. So I would just put a plug in here, like, let's just do that to minimize the need to do this in a painful way.
Okay. Duly noted. Thank you. Seeing no other discussion, I'm happy to move hold. Any discussion on that? All right, all those in favor of hold, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, it's unanimous. Last item. 77-26, review of the Newton City Charter. So first, let me say, folks asked me to send a calendar. I sent everyone the calendar. Before we even dive into our discussion tonight, are folks okay with that calendar? And in an effort to be responsive to the desire to do the quote unquote low-hanging fruit, I have selected what I think are a couple of the less controversial articles with fewer changes. So I tried to lay out a calendar where we can do this, over the course of a year, basically. And I tried to front load what I think are the easier things. So
generally, that's a memo that I can't find, and I don't know where it is. I know Miles has sent
if
it.
you have the agenda,
Yeah, it should be.
So last
Yeah,
two weeks,
so that's basically-
it was nice
That
together.
makes sense. Now, what is it?
it's actually page 5 and 6
Well,
of
yes,
the agenda, but there are more.
original idea. It's actually attached to the. something else.
That was my crazy thing I asked Miles to
I
attach to the
know,
agenda, so
what a
you have it on
radical
start.
idea. Sorry.
So, and then if you want, we can get into Article 6, but Council President Oliver. Oh, I think that's your hand.
Yeah, so what I'm assuming that the directed questions were from the commission last time. Is that, like, the last commission came up with some of these edits?
I think I was
Is it
not
fair?
clear in my memo, and I apologize for that. What I shared with you guys was a red line version, which was the final recommendation of the Charter Commission. Okay, Not to say that's my recommendation, not to say that's what we had to do, but as a foundation, these are some of the things that were changed. But then in my memo, I tried to explain the changes, the modifications. And if we wanted to make any similar modifications, the questions we would answer to make those modifications. So for example, in Article 6, if you look at the red line version, the red line version of Article 6 strikes out 6.1, which is reorganization plans by the city council. Because the charter commission thought the city council doesn't reorganize the administrative department. If the mayor comes in and if the mayor has an idea like we all just saw, the mayor proposes reorganizations. And it's up to the city council to say yes, say no, you know, try to modify them, whatever, work with the mayor. But it seemed like a fully administrative function to contemplate organization of the administrative department. And most of us who've been here a while haven't seen many reorganizations proposed by the city council. So it's a fairly straightforward way to address that, take it out of the charter, but recognizing that, like Councilor Baker has said, there are often budgetary implications, and we saw the mayor say there are going to be budgetary implications here. So the Charter Commission recommended putting into the charter that if the mayor is going to propose a reorganization plan with budgetary implications, that it be done by March 1st.
With a clarification.
Yes, Councilor Brown.
Did you share with the rest of the committee the document that shows the discussion that the commission had about particular issues?
So I sent everyone the link to all the documents from each of the articles, which have all those things. I didn't want to overwhelm and cherry pick, you know, this document or that document, but it was plenty of backup for anyone who wanted to see what went into more. Did you find this helpful?
It's very interesting to see the discussion on each of those issues before they actually made a recommendation.
One other piece of this, I want to, if I can, Mr. Chairman, is we went through back 10 years ago and went through and picked out a number of provisions which we recommended to the mayor through a home rule petition, which would be the same vehicle that would occur here. And the mayor ultimately disagreed with our recommendation, principally because of a recommendation, I think, of having a council to the council, you know, a lot of them. But this was sort of the where we came out after a much less comprehensive review, and I just think every member of this committee who's going through this would benefit from having this document available. And I would just ask that if we provide it as part of an attachment of the first report, and then it's there for everybody to see. If that's agreeable to you.
Absolutely.
And then the other thing is that in terms of your calendar, this is all a calendar that basically gets done this term, and some of these can be disposed of, I think, relatively quickly. But the composition of the council is one meeting in October, if I recall, and then the mayor is the next. My sense is that calendar is probably going to have to be elastic.
I think that's right.
Because I would be astonished if that issue would be disposed of in one meeting, or disposed of at all. But nonetheless, I mean, just so I'm not saying the order is wrong, but I do think that the schedule is ambitious once you get into the fall, and so it's. I think you're really looking at fall and early spring.
I think that's exactly right. I think, you know, what I've actually laid out here is probably the first meeting at which some of these things could be discussed, understanding that some of them may require follow-up. Most of them, I would think, would require follow-up.
Yeah, and the other question I have for you, do you expect a comprehensive report at the end or an interim? Because there may be, because of the legislative calendar, I don't know when home rule petitions get considered, you know, whether they're done just as they come in or whether they have a particular season. But if there were,
they don't have a season.
They don't have a season.
Yeah, they go anytime.
All right, so that's irrelevant. It's just a question then of you want to take chunks of this at one point and say these are relatively easy. Let's just get that done, or do we have to wait till the end of the party to do it? That's the other thing.
Yeah, my hope was to get to the end of the party and have one home rule proposal to send up to the legislature. But, you know, if the will of the committee is to break it apart or do things in the interim, then so be the will of the committee.
Well, I guess the one other sort of triage like we were trying to figure out rules, is there anything that needs to be done sooner rather than later in order to, facilitate the work of the city that,
We've waited over 50 years at this point, so.
I got it, so, but I just felt I should ask the question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Other comments? Either on the overall calendar or Article 6, which we've now sort of gone into. Council Farrell.
Is it possible to have, if people are interested, conversations at other periods in these meetings?
Explain.
You got a calendar, but what in summer we're basically off. Can we do more, have more meetings?
Oh, I think we'll need more meetings than these, absolutely.
Okay. Without waiting to fall?
I mean, I'll go with the will of the committee. I think the committee didn't want to undertake charter reform to the exclusion of everything else. We certainly have budget discussions coming up as well. And I didn't want to monopolize the committee's time, but I did want to lay out a schedule that sort of kept us moving. So that was what this was. And again, over the summer, we meet less frequently. We usually meet once or twice in July and don't always meet in August. Sometimes we meet once in August. But I thought it might behoove us to have a public hearing. And I thought the summer would actually be a good opportunity right in advance of the fall, where we're gonna, talk about potentially structure of the city council, things like that. So sometimes people like to hear from the public, and I thought, knowing that it was coming up, that might present the opportunity. Usually there's a concern with people vacationing, but I think with Zoom, we've overcome a lot of that.
There are parts of this, having gone through it, that unless somebody like these first two options tonight, if somebody has a reason, I assume that you were in agreement with these two articles in the proposal. And
not all of Article 7.
Okay, but it's not the whole article. And we can get through a bunch of these two things fairly quickly.
Yes.
And maybe even move up the schedule. Or have it a way that if we all look at the conversations, and when people like yourself and Councilor Baker, I don't know how much you were involved in the actual discussions, but tell us what you liked about that resolution, what you didn't like about that resolution, and focus on that as opposed to going through every single line of this stuff. Is that making any sense?
No.
Article 6.
Yep.
Do you have were you in agreement with that?
Yes.
End of story. So unless somebody has a specific question because they've read it, so well, how did you get here? If they don't have questions, then we just say we like you guys all did in Article 6.
But Article 6 is a little unique because Article 6.
I'm just saying that there are places. And you just said not all of Article 7.
Right.
So there are parts of Article 7 that you did agree with, parts you didn't. We come in here looking at Article 7, and here's the piece that I had a problem with. Anybody else got issues with this? It just helps the conversation move forward.
Sorry.
No, I have great respect for what the commission did.
Yeah.
And looking at the pieces that they gave a lot of thought and time to, I look at a bunch of them and I say, I'm okay with them. And I'd like to get to the ones where I think there really will be substantial conversation.
Well, I think we'll get to those.
Yeah.
And I thought it would behoove certainly committee members to have a little bit more time to do some of the homework that we were able to do on Articles 6 and 7 pretty quickly. But I think there's more homework on Article 4, Article 3.
Just
so, but if they go quickly, that'd be great. If we're all in agreement on everything, that'd be fantastic. Let me come to Councilor Chong first, then I'll come back to you, Councilor Baker. Councilor Chong? I'm sorry, Bixby. Whoever you are.
I mean, I'm flattered, but I mean, we're shaping the conversation around the areas that you've highlighted. Yes. So we're focusing in on these proposed changes. Yes.
But anything is on the table that anyone.
Okay.
Anyone,
exactly.
Yes.
So
yes.
So but I think we don't need to go through the whole article and say we agree with this.
No, we don't.
We can say, do we generally agree, and would we like to?
Does anyone want to change anything else about Article 6?
Great. Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry, Councilor Baker.
So I would be a dissenter from having a public hearing, and the reason I think is, and I'm going to dissent on another dimension of this, but my concern is that the public hearing is actually at the wrong time for this purpose. We've got the Charter Commission work in the background. And the public hearing may pick up and talk about issues that are not going to be talked about for some, and I suspect they're going to be the legislative composition and those kinds of things. There's not going to be a lot of debate, I suspect, in the public hearing about some of the things we would talk about first. So it seems to me that I'm cautious about going through this whole process anyways. I think I've expressed because it seems to me a lot of work that has been done by the Charter Commission was turned down, and we've managed to operate. And so we're spending a lot of our time, and by implication the public time, on something that I'm not sure is necessary. So that's my general concern about taking up the whole item and looking at our calendar. It's the Gacy Creek becomes programs and services every month. It's Charter Commission. And that's why I want you to see the home rule petition where we picked out those things we thought were most essential and then did them. But leaving that issue aside, I certainly don't want to ask for a public hearing and the kind of expectations that may stir up in people for a result that in fact we're not going to reach. And I would rather wait and see where we come out. And then if we decide we want public input as well, we can do that. But I certainly don't want to spend part of my June on a public hearing, which can be quite an elaborate exercise and replay of other activity that we. So my view is, I think we ought to be taking a very. I applaud the chair's effort to try and put his item into a framework, but even looking at the framework, it's consuming a lot of our time and energy, and I'm not confident that that's the best use of our time. But that's a global concern I have about the item. But I certainly would recommend not putting a public hearing into the system at this point. If we decide to do one for good cause, or invite some specific people in to talk about a specific issue, I'm open to that if that seems to be important. But
and are you saying that you would rather do that after we're done?
Yeah.
To more as a reaction to recommendations that this committee has.
Okay. And then before we make a decision, I mean, that's we generally, and just as an alternative mechanism in zoning and planning, we've evolved a model where we try and cook an item fairly thoroughly before we bring it around the public hearing, and then we bring it up, rather than ask people to talk about something they haven't seen yet.
Councilor Farrell.
I completely agree with Councilor Baker about that aspect. And
the public hearing?
Yeah. What I was trying to say before is I have great respect for what the commission did. And everybody, we hear that it wasn't accepted. And that primarily wasn't accepted by the mayor.
Well, the Charter Commission recommendation got voted down by the people.
Okay, but not by a lot. And we don't,
by a lot, but we think largely because of city council structure.
Right. And I think that's what everybody.
So overly simplified. Any voter could have had their own reasons, and certainly can't.
Absolutely true. So that's why I was trying to suggest that we all had a chance to read what the recommendations were in the Charter Commission and read the discussion about why they came up with those determinations. And unless somebody said, yeah, well, on Article 6 or 4 or 5, but I don't understand this piece. And have the conversations about that, committee coming back and saying that, rather than going through all the articles, each article. Let me just finish it and then get to the ones that we all really want to have an extended conversation about. And I mean, for me, there's 3. The rest of the stuff, I look at this, I'm okay. I can live with 6 and 7. You have some thoughts on 7. I'd like to hear those, and that's cool. But I don't know about 8. I don't know about 3. You know, I just think there's a whole bunch of this, and most of us are going to sit here and say the commission did a great job. And maybe you've heard since then that what people didn't really like, but the big one is the composition of the council. And that's where our conversation ultimately is going to end up with, I think.
So, well, I'll tell you my thinking on it. And again, I am a man of the people being the committee members. And I will, proceed generally speaking as folks want, but my thinking on it was twofold. Was that I have certainly done a lot of homework on this. I have spent a lot of time on this, but I can't expect you guys to have done that as well. And I actually want you to come to these conversations prepared to discuss them. So without taking too much committee time, I wanted people to be able to do their homework, read through the stuff, and come here to have an informed discussion, and then we can evaluate. Good, bad, you know, what do we want to do? I didn't think it was fair to ask people to come to any meeting prepared to discuss the whole thing, every article, because I think that's a real lot of, I mean, the commission took 18 months, right, to go through all the articles to do its homework. My hope is that by spacing it out this way, it addresses some of Councilor Baker's concern about how much of the committee time it actually takes, because we can go off, we can do our homework, we can come prepared to discuss things and evaluate, this looked good, this didn't look good. And then we can, after we have a couple articles under our belt, we can come prepared to discuss those, the heavier ones. And I thought the heavier ones, to the request of, you know, let's do low hanging fruit first. Let's sort of get our skis under us and figure out how this charter thing reads, how it goes. I thought we'd be in a better position to discuss those down the road. The school committee one, I specifically reached out to some school committee members and the chair of the school committee, and I said, I want you guys to be there. When's a good time? Like, what's a good month, you know, for you to do that? When do you feel like, with budget, with school calendar, with things happening? And their recommendation was made, so that's why I put that one on for May. But that was mine. Councilor Bixby, is it Bixby? Yeah.
I guess I was a little confused at the start of this. I would like to maybe make a little motion that we proceed and see how this goes with sections 6 and 7, and then we can maybe evaluate more there, but then we give it a try and dig in, because it is 8:47. I know I was gone for 45 minutes, but nearing 2 hours at this point. It did, in fact, it was unanimously approved, so thank you.
All right, so I laid out, and I do support the point that Councilor Farrell made. I do support what the Charter Commission did on Article 6. If folks looked at Article 6, it's essentially 2 choices. It's eliminating city council origin of reorganization plans and requiring the mayor to submit reorganization plans by March 1st if it has a budgetary implication.
So,
and rewording.
Having tried to move us along.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me a little bit about why we would remove, even if it's never really been used, any of our power, potential or otherwise?
My thinking was that it really was superfluous, that the city council doesn't do that. That if it's not something that we want the administration to be controlled by the mayor, we have a strong mayor form of government, that we don't want the city council messing with the structure of the administration.
I agree with that, in that they are the ones who have to get the day-to-day work done. They know how it operates. We don't. You know, and it's just makes sense to me. I don't think we're giving them any power now.
President Albert.
Just out of curiosity, let's say we came to the table and said, we want a sustainability office. And the powers that be at City Hall, CFO, COO, mayor, all look at each other and go, that'd be great, but we can't fund it.
Well, that's a different article.
Yeah, that's our percent. But I'm just like, my understanding of what would, I mean, it would just sit there. There wouldn't be that would be it. We can't force them to fund it. We know that. At least under the charter as it's currently written, we can't force that.
Right.
So my initial question was, well, why would we just because we haven't doesn't mean we might never want to. So I'm actually not supportive of the idea of just dumping the ability to do it, even though that ability comes with some serious, like, you know, follow-ons or impacts that are outside of our control by design. I do like the changes to the mayoral, you know, yes. Like, no, my only question isn't March 1st cutting it basically like to the minute though? Because if I recall correctly, the rest of the ordinance, we have to have a budget in place by July 1. there are some other requirements, council has to process said organization request within 2 meetings of the city council within the first 30 days and blah, 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 and a couple of things have to happen. Like, to me, I was like, yeah, the mayor should absolutely positively get that to us in the right timeline. I'm not sure if I agree with March 1st, but I'm assuming somebody's done that homework. So,
I mean, that was my recollection was, Brooke Lipsick was a member of the Charter Commission, a former council president, Board of Alderman president. And we talked to her at length about that and other, former councilors, former aldermen. And that was the timeline, especially because I mean, here we are almost mid-April, we're about to get the budget. We would have had the reorganization plan for a month. Yeah, and it also gave enough time for a new mayor, 2 months.
correct.
To come in and come up
See
with
the
it.
need.
Yeah.
Yep, fair enough.
Okay, so you're a no on 1, yes on 2.
Yes.
Fair enough. Other thoughts, Councilor Baker?
Yeah,
Other thoughts?
I'm the opposite. I'm yes on 1 and no on 2, because I want to have the mayor retain the flexibility for, I think it's advisable to do it, but I'm not sure I want to put a date that might be a difficulty if there's for some good reason, there's a reason to do something later. And you unfortunately can't change the charter except by home rule petition, and then, and so, I think the power has not really been exercised by the council, so I'm okay with the lead, but I'd just take the date out.
Okay, so we have at least one objection to each of the proposed changes, but so far only one. Councilor Farrell, I heard supportive of both changes. Councilor Bixby?
I mean, I'm a no on 1 and yes on 2. And I think the thing about the date is just that some major reorganization doesn't get sort of lost in the budget, because it's really just March 1st through June 30th at that point, and then the window opens back up again, but
For the following.
for the next year. But the idea that, creation of, I mean, so maybe we put a deadline on ourselves or something as well with our power, but to create something, some new whole department or anything does, to me, deserve a discussion of its own, like we had with the arts and culture department. And it would then be very, if it was wrapped into the budget, it wouldn't necessarily get that question separating it, but including the financial impacts.
Ask a question.
Sure.
Councilor Bixby and Councilor Oliver, what do you think we lose in 1? What do you think we're giving up?
I mean, to me, it's just, if we weren't doing this exercise, it sits there, it's, I mean, like you said, I don't think it comes with any true, you can't force a funding of a position, you can't force a hiring of someone, you can't, whatever, but if we weren't embarking on this charter exercise, it would still just sit there as a power, and I guess I'm just hesitant to, in a system that's supposed to be about checks and balances and all of that, just kind of, literally strike through with red virtual ink here, something that is within the council's jurisdiction at the moment, so.
May I respond?
Please.
The issue about creating positions, paying for things, that all is in section 3.
Right.
And we can disapprove of the mayor's, or we can talk to the mayor about this plan. So all this is a plan.
Yeah.
Making them give us a plan. There are other areas where we really can talk about our power to influence things. I don't think it's here. So that's why.
I mean, I'm not,
Yes, I'm one.
I'm not gonna throw up my hands. If it gets approved, to me, given that it's there.
No,
Yeah.
I'm very interested in
Yeah.
the issue of power, but I just don't think it's here.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Am I to take silence as affirmation of the changes?
I'll go ahead and chime in. I am a yes on both. I think creating an organizational plan that actually then you can't legally hire someone and pay someone and resource the team to be able to do is a fantasy. And so I don't think that's a real power. So it does, to me, feel like superfluous. We should be pruning the branches of the tree. And that feels like language that we can get rid of. On the second one, I think to me that feels like sort of timing and process hygiene. But I don't feel as strongly about that one. I feel like, sure.
Okay. Councilor Maliki, do you want to weigh in on either of these? Just because you haven't spoken, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I also don't want to take silence as ascension if it's objection.
Yeah, I tend to agree that that section 1 there, it's surprising to read and rather bizarre, since creating departments just seems to be an executive function to me, not a function of the city council that we could not fund and force to happen. On basically section 2, what we're really talking about is having a sort of deadline for ones that would impact the impending budget, really. You know, I could see making it like, why wouldn't we make it February 1? So it's not as somebody said, the sort of the absolute latest it could be, and still get it done for the budget, because they would still give, you know, a new mayor 2 months to put the request in. Okay, 1 month, but the mayor was, you know, will have been elected in November in a normal year, unless we needed a special election, and they've got November and December to also be thinking about what they want to do.
Okay, so you're supportive of both, but you would move to February.
Yeah. You know, if people are strongly in favor of March 1, I don't have a strong objection to it, but I think February would make a little more sense.
I think March 1st makes more sense, but I defer to the will of the March.
I'm like any date, so.
Right.
Eagerly opposed, but never
I'm
mind.
actually,
You prefer February 30th. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm actually gonna throw my support to Councilor Baker's idea. I don't think there needs to be a date. We are basically saying if the mayor came to us on March 5th with something changed, we're basically saying here by charter, you can't do this for this fiscal year because it does change the budget. But that wouldn't be it seems a little arbitrary to pick a date. Like, I mean, I get the intent, I really do. And I think I would want to revisit the why behind it.
I have one other thought, excuse me when you're done, if I could. Part of this is a home rule petition, not part of it, it's founded on a home petition which the mayor has to agree.
Right.
And so I would rather not start the conversation with a limitation on the mayor's power that doesn't have a solid grounding in some policy that we really think is important. Now, there is something that's not part of the charter. If we're talking about charter, I'd like to raise it a little bit because it's somewhat analogous, it's not necessarily the organization, but the provision in the charter that talks about how the staff of the council is funded has always been interpreted that the mayor asks for appropriations, and but it's never been entirely clear to me that the city council did not have under our charter, maybe this is a statutory question, and Mr. Temple is here from the law department, have the ability or should have the ability to fund the people that serve the council alone. You know, the city clerk is a different role, but certainly the clerk of the council, that's our staff. And the question is, if that's a charter change as opposed to a statutory change, that's one I would think would merit the time, but wasn't, if I recall, a part of the charter commission discussion. But I just was sparked by thinking about reorganization because it means staffing and how they're funded. And that just reminded me of that. So as part of your charter review, it may be worth thinking about issues that aren't on the charter commission's docket, so to speak, but are meritorious for us to consider, which is this something we should consider?
Yeah.
But that's not the question you've asked us, but I just wanted to put that on the table because it's outside the scope of the charter commission.
Understood, and we're not limited to the charter commission's report.
No, I
I'm
understand.
just presenting those as a foundation.
There needs to be a place where that occurs, and so when that article comes up, I would want to flag that.
I will just respond quickly to the point you made, because I'm open to whatever, but I think rather than precluding a March 5th submission, I think my read of it is what it does is it signals to the mayor in advance of that, get your thing ready by March 1st. You know, don't like, and it was really designed to give the city council sufficient notice to act.
To do our work.
Right.
Oh, I understand.
But you know, point taken. Councilor Chang.
I was just going to refer back to the very thorough work of the previous charter commission. I have some of the files, the backup files pulled up here, and particularly for the addition of the March 1st deadline. Like, why do we need to have this? The quote here from that document is, we have heard from several councilors that they have been frustrated when reorganization proposals are initiated during the annual budget process. When the legislative body has limited capacity to thoroughly vet a proposal, they have had no warning ahead of time. So this addition was drafted to meet that frustration. And they wanted to have some date that was in advance of the beginning, the initiation of the budget process.
Could also be March 30th. Yes. 31st.
Yeah,
Good. Councilor Farrell.
the point that just passed. Many members of the commission sat in a committee meeting a couple of weeks ago, and they all offered to speak with anybody who wanted to ask them about any particular issues, and rather than laying it all on Councilor Crispin, if you have their names and email addresses, you can get them to them, and they are more than happy to meet with you, talk with you, whatever, about why they did pieces of this. I would like us to see sort of do a straw votes here and not real.
Oh, that's 100%. Like, I mean, I think all we're doing, if we have at least a majority of support for a change or the two changes or whatever, we can sort of table that. I can draft it. I can work with Miles to get it drafted, and then we'll revisit everything at the end. Everything remains on the table.
Thank you.
And it enables the discussions you're talking about of this is the way we thought about it at the meeting, but let's go do some more homework, you know? Okay. So I haven't yet heard a majority of opposition to either of these. So my read of this, why don't we take a straw vote here? On the first change, eliminating 6.1 by straw vote. All those in favor of eliminating 6.1? That's the city council.
I'm looking at the current version. I'm looking at this.
Oh, okay. All those in favor of eliminating the power of the city council to reorganize the administrative departments? I have 1, 2, 3, 4. Four. Those opposed to that? 1, 2, 3.
I'm cautious. I changed my mind. Sorry, you were persuaded. My colleagues were persuaded.
Okay, so for the moment that stays in as a change. For the moment, the recommendation of the committee, the straw vote of the committee is to eliminate the city council reorganization. Second change, requiring the mayor who is proposing a reorganization plan reasonably expected to affect the ensuing fiscal year's budget to get that done by March 1st. All those in favor of adding in a March 1st deadline? 1, 2, 3, 4. And those opposed? 1, 2. And those abstaining?
Councilor Malachi?
I think she may have
Those-
raised her hand for the
Counselor Malachi,
digitally, she may have raised.
I said, I was a yes. I was a yes.
5-2 on that. Okay. All right. Any other proposals relating to Article 6 at the moment? Okay. All right, on to Article C, on to Article 7. Okay, Article 7, as folks saw, talks about planning. This one is a little bit trickier. I tried to lay this out in the memo because there is a special act originally in 1975 that lays out the city of Newton having a Department of Planning and Development and a Planning and Development Board. That special act has been amended a couple times. One of the things the Charter Commission tried to do here in section 7.1 particularly, but also I think down in 7.3 a little bit, is coordinate this language with the language of the special act, eliminate some sort of superfluous language, urban renewal, things like that. Zoning ordinances are passed, and zoning ordinances should comply with the comprehensive plan, and they must be performed in accordance with state law. And so the Charter Commission recommended basically referencing that state law and saying, you know, zoning ordinances get passed by that. There is also a state law that lays out how comprehensive plans are designed. And so again, the Charter Commission just sort of eliminated some superfluous language or some extraneous language and said, this is the state law that governs the formation of a comprehensive plan. That's largely what is in most of this section, and that's the part that I tend to agree with. There's the last line of section 7.1 says that the mayor appoints the members of the board subject to council confirmation, referencing another part of the charter. That's accurate. That is an accurate depiction of the mayor's powers of appointment as they have always worked. It doesn't account for the fact that there is one member of the Planning and Development Board who is not appointed by the mayor. And so I would actually suggest that we say the mayor's appointees shall be made in accordance with sections 3.3a, because there is one that is not appointed by the mayor. And I know Mr. Temple is here from the law department. He's looked into this a little bit. Am I okay so far? Have I said things accurately, Mr. Temple?
Yeah, I think that's right. The only other thing I would add is in that 7.1 red line, I'd also want to throw in a reference to the Special Acts of 1975 as amended, but that's a small thing.
Yeah, fair. Thank you for mentioning that. And so we can do that. Okay, and the Special Act has been amended a few times, but basically in language like this, you say in accordance with chapter whatever it is of the Acts of 1975, comma, as amended. And you're covered for any future times it's amended. And it would need to be amended by state law because it is a separate state law.
This whole thing is state law.
Will be, if we do it through.
Well, I mean,
yes.
sorry, the charter is state law.
Yeah. So the other thing, well, before I get into the other thing, are folks generally okay with that philosophically as changes? And I'll make sure that, you know, to clean this up, to make sure that it is confined to just those things I don't like. Okay. The other thing that the Charter Commission talked about was, as I said to folks, the last comprehensive plan was passed by the City of Newton in 2007. So it's been about 19 years. And there was a sense from many of the members and certainly some members of the public that a comprehensive plan is a fairly important document. It lays out some of what you were talking about, like this is our goal as a city. This is what we want to be doing. This is how we are planning for the future. And it should be refreshed at some regular interval. And when a new mayor is selected, because these are usually generated by the mayor, I believe, under the law, they are generated by the administration, reviewed by the city council, passed, amended, you know, by the city council, but they originate with the mayor and the administration. That a new mayor ought to do that within 2 years. That a new mayor ought to come in and either say, here's a new comprehensive plan proposal, or I know we have a comprehensive plan, you know, stamp. I'm
Still
cool with
good.
it,
Still
right?
good.
Still good. And so the intervals that the commission selected were within 2 years of a new mayor coming on. And every 8 years, the city council ought to look at the comprehensive plan and decide if it needs to be refreshed. That's the one I'm less, sold on. I feel like, do we need to? I feel like we can, maybe review it when it's time to review it, or when there's a sense that we've gone astray or we started passing ordinances that don't comport with it. And then, oh, sorry, there's one other thing. Can I just go back to one other thing and then we can discuss the timeframes? I apologize for jumping around a little bit. There's language in here about a written finding from the Planning and Development Board about zoning proposals. This is at the very end. I think it's section 7.3 under the red line version B. It was C. And it requires the Planning and Development Board to report recommendations in writing to the City Council on proposed ordinance changes and whether they comport with the comprehensive plan. I think Mr. Temple would probably tell us that that is not done, that is not common practice, that we might be able to do without that.
I want to comment on that.
Councilor Baker, please.
So I'm not interested in requiring the amendment to comprehensive plan that has the degree that impact that you're describing. The tradition, Mr. Temple can correct my memory, is that the Massachusetts law is that basically when you amend a zoning ordinance, you've effectively amended the comprehensive plan in the process. That's been the historical practice. So if we go through that process, in effect, we're doing it when we change the zoning. I'm not in favor of trying to create a super constitution for our zoning process. That's basically what this would do if I read it. And that to me is going to make it's challenging enough to get things done as we go forward, but I'm not interested in adding another layer of difficulty to what we want to do when we want to do it by having a comprehensive plan. It can be a guide, but having it have legal effect in the sense of controlling what we do is not something I want to put into the charter. So I'm the appointment of the planning department. This is one section of the ordinances, of the charter that I would move back to a later conversation because I think it has implications that we really don't fully understand. I don't view this as a low-hanging fruit option personally, but that's just because I've been dealing with this stuff for so long and seen that at some point, so that's my general comment, and I would not take this item and put it into the mix. I don't view it as it's just sort of an administrative matter. It's a really substantive modification in how we operate, what we do, and how we do it. And now the Charter Commission recommended it, but
what part of this do you think changes the legal ramifications of the zoning ordinance or the legal standing of the comprehensive plan?
And so the proposal shall report its recommendations on the proposed ordinance in accordance with Chapter 5. There's a report, they have to do that anyway. That's part of the statute. And then there's a piece of this that I'm trying to read this off the screen, so bear with me.
Yeah.
The ordinance is city not limited to shall reflect the comprehensive plan. That's new language. And then there's the whole process of you have to create comprehensive with the city council review the ordinances for consistency with the comprehensive plan, resolve and involve resident professional assistance to the council as it deems appropriate. We have
that. Well, let me just say that is reflect the intent of the city's comprehensive plan is new language, but that is intended, my recollection was, to update what you see in 7.2C, the effect of the comprehensive plan, which was to serve as a guide for all future action. And it was, to my recollection, sort of an easier way of saying the comprehensive plan guides you, and then you pass zoning ordinances within that framework.
Well, guidance is different from consistency, and I think that consistency really has a different substantive impact. I can see someone coming in and challenging our zoning that we pass and say it's not consistent, as opposed to the plan says, I'd like you to do X, and we say, thank you for the guidance, but we want to do Y. I mean, that to me limits the authority of the council. So this one is not one I would support.
Well, but it currently says guide.
It says currently says guide, right? Yeah, but consistency I view as a stronger term.
Reflecting the intent you think is more restrictive
Yeah. I
than
do.
guiding?
Yeah. It says, it shall review the city's ordinance for consistency with the comprehensive plan, right? And the other.
You're talking about the review of the planning development board.
It says,
Sorry.
the ordinances,
I was
I'm
talking about a
looking at
different
C. Now, again, part of the problem is that I'm looking at a red line,
Yeah.
but it
the
says
red
the
line is
ordinances shall reflect the comprehensive plan. I review reflect, and then the term consistency. I think that adds what amounts to a layer of control over what we do that I'm not prepared to go for yet. Now, there may be people who
No.
want to, but it seems to me that's not just a ministerial change or a clarification. It is a significant change in the relative balance of power between the Planning and Development Board and the City Council. So I would leave this one alone for the time being, because I do think that has major impact.
You're looking at 7 to
Seven
C,
to
C.
C.
Yeah.
and you're looking at what was in the proposed change,
Yes,
which I have ordinance of the city, including but not limited to the zoning ordinances,
this is,
shall not be inconsistent with the comprehensive plan.
that's right. This is, what I'm looking at is a red line where I've got new language in underlined and strikeout, right?
And that's,
It's due with the
is the
agenda.
red line different?
The red line was in the.
That's what
The
I'm
red line
looking
is
at the
in
agenda attachment. That's what I'm.
Is not the final version. Is it the final version that was submitted? That people voted on?
By the Charter Commission, yes.
Okay, because in this one, which I understand follows, this is our final report. The language is slightly different. It says the ordinances of the city, including but not limited to the zoning ordinances, shall not be inconsistent with the comprehensive plan. Now, it's saying what you don't want it to say. It has to be consistent. It's not suggesting it's a guide.
Right, but that's a
just-
different language than the red line I'm looking at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I apologize, that's on me. You're right, yes. I did not have a final version of Article 7 in a separate thing. I only had it in the full report. I thank you for pointing that out. I should have graphed it from the final report somehow.
The point that
Yes,
Councilor Baker is making is consistent. He doesn't like it.
no, we had a whole debate on the Charter Commission about saying not inconsistent with. And I think it came from you.
Yeah.
And I think you persuaded the commission to go with not inconsistent with.
Yeah, I thought if
Yeah.
you're going to do this, it would be better
Yeah.
not to have it not inconsistent,
I-
rather consistent. So,
I assure you, I did not
Do that.
intentionally mislead the committee here. I'm very sorry. That is my fault. I pulled the wrong language.
well,
So,
this is why this is a.
So this one
but help,
is.
Yeah.
help
It's a
me,
worthwhile exercise.
you're wanting it not to be inconsistent,
No,
or to be,
the Charter Commission said it had a not inconsistent, which I thought was better than saying consistent. Now, we have the language in the red line here.
Okay.
that talks about- And,
language in the red line.
but my concern,
When I come back with
This is the-
language that reflects the will of this committee, I will bring in that language.
Yeah.
If that be the will of the committee, I apologize. I will bring that in. But can we talk for a minute about the timing, the 2 years and the every 8 years? Because that was a big thing here, and I'm not sure I support that.
yeah, I'm troubled about the kind of putting calendars on these, because the process it takes I went through, I can't remember, were you on the council when we did the comprehensive plan review?
No.
It was a very long process, and we went through a significant amount of effort, and it's not something that can be, I think, done on a calendar basis like this. And so I would recommend not having a calendar tied to it, whether the new mayor or 8 years.
I'm with you on that.
I don't see that. Where's the 8 years?
And so, 7 to B.
7
Yeah.
to B.
So to me, I do think
Within 2 years.
having some,
Hang on one second.
We're asking at 8 years.
That's right, it's not in here.
It's not in the final one?
Uh-huh.
Then I really screwed up, I apologize.
You want to hold this piece until next time, just so we can get the clear.
Well, we're definitely gonna hold it until next time, but let me just hear other thoughts on this
I
one.
mean, I think as somebody who is newer to the council, the impact of the comprehensive plan didn't become clear to me until a little bit ways into my term on the council. And I think, you know, knowing that it has been so long since it was sort of looked at in some more widespread way is, you know, perhaps one factor. To blame it on other people, not me. So I do think there's something to be said for a requirement in some way that this is at least presented to the council, or updates are presented to the council, or something on either some calendar timeline or, you know, with a new administration so that they could look at it. You know, I think the language of submit a comprehensive plan and with, you know, that level of specificity, but, you know, they could do updates to the comprehensive plan, or they could review the comprehensive plan with the council, or something that's maybe a little bit more, you know, manageable, so that we all, you know, and the city knows if this is supposed to be a guidelines at least, you know.
The mayor can decide whether it's a small, like a light update. Or a complete, you know, a complete rewriting.
Let me just comment on the process for a second, though. Just remember, right now, we have a planning department that's down 3 people. We have an interim director and a director of long-range planning. The process of taking on this task, even, I don't know what the current language is about the assistance, says involve resident professional assistance to the council as it deems appropriate, the mayor's office. This is a big piece of work. And I'm just cautious about mandating a big piece of work.
That's why I'm just wondering if we could mandate some smaller version of it, you know, to just.
But even the smaller part, you know, if you want to take a look at it and just think, what does it take to update this sort of thing? It's hard enough. I'm just speaking out of experience as only planning, but just getting ordinances done. So that's part of my misgiving about all of this, is that we have a limited resource opportunity to begin with, and so that's where I come out. But I would certainly be willing to look at the final version and then have another conversation on that meeting committee about this one. But I would not want to act on this section tonight, if that's really.
I think I screwed up, not that we should, but Council Farrell.
In this one, I don't see the language the council is talking about.
Okay.
So we should all decide which version we're going to comment on.
Yeah, this is all my fault. I'm very sorry. I will bring you back Article 7 as proposed in a much cleaner way.
Can you just send the final version to everybody?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's the advantage that I applaud the chair, because he's trying to give us a red line version, which I think is really important. It's not just the version they proposed. It was cleaner to have their version as proposed, but for our review process, I think a red line version is better.
Except some of the language they're living in.
Oh, no. This is just, the chair's acknowledged that
The red line was the wrong version.
he got the wrong
We
version.
need a
That's
red
all.
line, just not this.
Yeah,
Although I do actually agree with you that having a clean final version can also be helpful for.
I think it's easy, and you know, ideally, but
I'm just going from current to what they did.
Yeah.
Vice President.
7.2b, adoption, last sentence in the, what I believe is being offered as the original. The last sentence reads, the city's council may thereafter, from time to time, modify the comprehensive plan. In this version, it's redlined. I'm curious as to why that was the case. That it was taken out, because
Would you repeat what you referenced?
The question is essentially, can the city council originate a comprehensive plan amendment? That's what it was. Because the city council retains in the new language, in the proposed new language, the ability to modify a proposal from the administration. But it was similar to reorganization plans, removing the city council from originating a comprehensive plan without it coming from the administration.
Okay, that's just not in this particular iteration then? Because I see where the mayor submits to the council modifications to the plan, and the city council shall approve or not the modifications without amendments.
With or without?
With or without amendments.
With or without amendments.
Yes.
However, is that, okay, I'm gonna save the rest of my questions because I missed the with.
And again, agree or disagree with that, that was what it was intended to effectuate,
Fair enough.
was essentially the origination power.
And
Councilor Maliki. Councilor Maliki, you're still muted.
Yeah, has somebody already moved to hold this? Because I think it's very hard to make any sense of this, knowing that this is not even the final version that the Charter Commission put forward. And we really, I guess, ought to be, if we're going to look at a red line version of anything, we ought to be looking at the red line version of existing charter versus the Charter Commission's final version. And I too, I mean, I have notes all over this, things that are problematic. And I would suggest that for the May meeting, we go ahead with the school department, school committee article and defer this to down the road, because it is anything but simple and non-controversial. I mean, there's some crazy stuff in here, like within 2 years after the adoption of a comprehensive plan, or the city council shall review the city's ordinances. That's, a 2-inch thick book for consistency with a comprehensive plan, and shall involve resident and professional assistance as the council deems appropriate. So, like, is that consultants who's going to pay for that professional assistance? And it sounds like an incredible amount of work that when would we be doing that? So I think this whole Article 7 ought to be pushed further down the road and proceed with the simpler, less controversial items.
Well, I appreciate it. I think we have had a lot of the substantive discussion here on a lot of the provisions, so I will definitely come back with a revised version that I think eliminates the things folks have already talked about not liking. Also hones in on what the Charter Commission recommended. I think at least in substance, we have talked about the major provisions of Article 7. So I have a sense of this committee. I'll come back. We won't take a straw vote now, but I'll come back with an updated version based on what the Charter Commission wrote, but also based factoring in feedback I got from legal and folks at this meeting. So I think we can absolutely hold it.
Yeah, and I would do the school thing before I would come back to this. Because again, this is going to take some time, and I don't want to have the school department conversation upheld. And again, part of the difficulty we're all running into right away at the beginning is that this is the charter conversation is a big conversation and taking a lot of our time. And there are other things that the committee will want to work on. So
yes,
you're the manager of the process.
I understand. I will also say that the more we talk about this taking up our time, the more time it takes up. So I understand what everyone has said. We can hold Article 7 for now. The next thing we will do is Article 4. We'll do that in May, and we'll bring this back when there's time.
Okay.
All right. All right. So can I get a motion to hold this item?
I just did move to, but
Second.
So Councilor Maliki has moved to hold the item. Any discussion? All right. All those in favor of hold, please say aye. 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 All right. Item is held. That concludes our business at 9:30. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Have a good night.
I have a
Totally
question.
good. We took out the H